Assalamu alaikum. In this lecture, I will talk about the three-quarter crown, which is a partial coverage crown. The partial veneer crown is a cast metal crown restoration that covers only a part of the clinical crown. Most commonly used type of the partial veneer crown is the three-quarter crown. In the three-quarter crown, all the tooth surfaces are prepared except the buccal or the labial surface. So, this type of a crown will be less retentive and resistant than full veneer crown. It can be used for anterior or posterior teeth. It can be used as a single restoration or as a retainer for short span bridge. The uses of partial veneer crown will be first as a retainer for short span bridge, second as a single restoration, third as a splint in anterior teeth. The indication of partial crown for the posterior and the anterior teeth will be when I have a sufficient bulk of tooth structure and intact, well-supported buccal surface. And mainly, I use the partial veneer crown as a retainer for fixed partial denture. Besides that, I can use it as a splinting for anterior teeth. I mean by the splinting of the anterior teeth when there is a mobility of the anterior teeth due to periodontitis, I can use the partial veneer crown as a splint for them. The contraindication of partial veneer crown will be first in short clinical crown. As I mentioned before, we need a sufficient bulk of tooth structure, so I can use it in a short clinical crown. Second, in high caries index patient, because the finishing line will be on the occlusal surface, so I can't use it in a high caries index patient. Third, when there is extensive destruction. Fourth, poor alignment. Fifth, thin teeth as in short clinical crown. Second, the long span bridge because it is less retentive than a full coverage crown, so I can't use it in a long span bridge. And finally, for non-vital teeth, as you know that the non-vital teeth will discolored by time, so the buccal surface should be covered. The advantage of a three-quarter crown will be first, conservative of tooth structure, second, easy access of the margin, third, less dangerous irritation than complete crown, fourth, easy escape of cement and goods seating, fifth, electrical pulp test is possible through the buccal surface, sixth, complete seating of the crown can be easily seen by direct observation. But the disadvantage of a 3/4 crown will be first, it has less retention and resistance than complete cast crown. Second, limited adjustment can be done in the path of withdrawal. Third, possibility of showing metal, especially in the lower anterior and posterior teeth. Fourth, possibility of recurrent caries more along the cavo-surface line angle. And finally, difficulty in preparation compared to other types of crown restoration. The recommended dimension for the 3/4 crown, as you see in this picture for the upper molar, will be 1.5 mm on the functional cusp and 1 mm for the functional cusp, and the occlusal clearance should be 1.5. Besides that, we need a bevel less than 0.5 mm on the facial cusp, and this bevel should extend to the lingual embrasure. The steps of preparation on maxillary posterior teeth will be: first, we start with the occlusal surface preparation. A depth orientation groove will be placed on the anatomic ridge and grooves of occlusal surface using round end taper fissure pair. The grooves should extend through occlusobuccal line angle, but only with 0.5 mm deep to prevent metal display. After that, we prepare the buccal and palatal cusp following the inclination of the tooth until the depth orientation groove will disappear. That we place a wide bevel on the functional cusp using the same pair. Finally, the occlusal clearance should be checked in centric and eccentric, as you see in this picture. Now we do the axial surface preparation or lingual surface preparation. A 3-depth orientation groove are placed using the same pair, and they should be placed parallel to the long X of the tooth. After that, the remaining tooth structure between these grooves should be removed, following the contour of the tooth to obtain a chamfer finishing line that is 0.5 mm supragingival. We should extend our preparation interproximally as far as possible to open the contact, and we should use a needle point diamond burr to break the contact by moving in up and down motion until the contact will be opened. We can cut inside the marginal ridge, leaving a strip of proximal enamel, as you see in the picture, to protect the adjacent tooth. And keep the burr upright using a sewing motion to open the contact, and be careful, don't cut with the tip of the burr. You should be careful that the mesial finishing line should remain out of the sight when viewed buccally, and we should develop a proximal flare, as I pointed in this picture. الأقصد بالproximal flare إنه نهاية التحضير اللي يكون قريب على الفيشل سيرفيس، يكون tooth structure with flaring or beveling to prevent unsupported enamel structure. After I open the contact and do the proximal flare, then I should extend this chamfer finishing line margin interproximal. As a part of proximal reduction and in order to improve retention of the preparation and as a substitution for the uncovered wall, proximal grooves should be placed on each proximal wall. It should be parallel to the long X of the tooth on path of insertion and parallel to each other. بهذه الصورة يتم تحضير البروximal grooves. والproximal grooves should be parallel to the long X of the tooth, and it should be parallel to each other. Besides, it should be parallel to the palatal axial wall. بهذه الصورة بدنا نحدد بقلم الرصاص المنطقة اللي هنحط بيها البروكسيمال جروفز، يكون تقريبا في منطقة التقاء الميدل والليبيال ثيرد، والبروكسيمال جروفز احنا احتاجيناها بالبارشل كفرج كراون لأنهم مثل ما تعرفون إنه الليبيال سيرفيس منحدري، فنحتاج نحط جروف حتى نزيد الريتينشن والريزيستنس for the restoration. نحتاج إنه نستخدم ال short taper diamond bear أو carbide bear، والبير يجب أن يدخل تقريبا كله في ال proximal surface 0.5 مليمتر حتى نحصل retention و resistance capillary restoration. ويجب إنه تنتبهون إنه البروكسيمال جروف ما تنتهي ما تنتهي إلى الفينيشينج لاين، لازم إنه يكون أكو مسافة بينها وبين ال finishing line or the margin of the preparation, so the base of the groove should stop short of the margin as you see in this picture. And the requirement of proximal groove, it should cut to full diameter of carbide burr number 171 to create definite lingual wall. Second, it should extend to the full length of proximal wall but ending about 0.5 millimeter to the chamfer finishing line. It should be placed as far as facially as possible without undermining facial surface between the middle and labial third. Finally, it should be parallel to the long X of the tooth. So the advantage of the proximal groove will be they increase the retention and resistance also by preventing rotation, and they reinforce the margin of the restoration at this area especially, beside that they act as a guide during placement. ورا ما كملت وضع proximal groove اتأكد من proximal flare. So I should refine the proximal flare واستعمل النيدل pointed diamond bear to smooth any sharp or point angle. مثل ما تلاحظون بالصورة الأولى إنه دي يسوي refine proximal groove، والصورة تحتها هي صورة تخطيطية وتوضيحية إنه في التحضير figure A إنه يوجد proximal grooves، ولكن بالسي إنه أكو proximal groove with proximal flare، يعني إحنا وخرنا ال unsupported or sharp or pointed angle. Beside the proximal groove, we need to make occlusal offset. I mean by the occlusal offset, it's a 1 millimeter wide groove made on the lingual inclination of the facial cusp. It is a V-shape inverted lie at a uniform distance from occlusal finishing line. مثل ما تلاحظون بهذه الصورة إنه بالبير دا يرسم لنا الأوكلوزال أوفست اللي هي يكون موقعها على اللينجوال انكلينيشن للبكل أور فيشيال كاسب، ويكون شكلها مثل حرف ال V المقلوب. على العموم الأوكلوزال أوفست هو كأنما هو توصيل بين ال proximal the two proximal grooves. So the advantage of proximal groove will be improvement of the cast strength. Besides, it will reinforce the margin of the restoration at this area. بعد ما خلصنا تحضير السن من الجهات الثلاثة الميجل والباليتال والديستال. يبقى لنا نحط finishing line على البكال surface. So we should put a bevel finishing line with 45 degree on the proximal or occlusal margin. اللي أقصده به إنه مثل ما تلاحظون البير كان بميلان زاوية 45 وأمشيه على الأوكلوزوفيشال مارجن حتى أرسم لي الفينيشنج لاين. دائما أحاول إنه تحضير البكال سيرفيس أو الفينيشنج لاين على البكال سيرفيس يكون as minimum as possible to keep minimum metal display. بعد ما أكمل التحضير إنه أتأكد من البريبريشن مالتي، إنه أهم شي الفينيشنج لاين يكون واضح، دائر السن عندما أنظر إلى من جهة الأوكلوزال. Now I will talk about the 3/4 crown preparation for the mandibular posterior teeth. The preparation will be the same for the maxillary posterior teeth, but there are some differences between upper and lower posterior teeth. And the big and main difference is the position of the finishing line on the facial surface. For the maxillary posterior teeth, the finishing line will terminate near the bucco-occlusal line angle, while in mandibular posterior teeth, the occlusal finishing line should be 1 mm gingival to the lower occlusal contact with the upper teeth. And this is because the buccal cusps in lower posterior teeth are the functional cusps. The second difference is in the upper posterior teeth, there should be occlusal offset, but for the lower posterior teeth, there is no offset. Instead, there is a bucco-occlusal shoulder, which serves the same purpose as the offset. مثل ما تلاحظون بالصور أمامكم إنه التحضير لل 3/4 crown للposterior mandibular posterior teeth حيشبه الماكسيلاري posterior teeth، فقط هو حيكون الفرق بالbuccal surface أحتاج إنه أمده أكثر. بالupper maxillary teeth انتهى البريبريشن مالتنا عند الأوكلوزو-buccal line angle، occluso-buccal line angle، بينما بالlower posterior teeth لا، أنا أحتاج إنه أمده 1 mm below the occlusal contact with the upper posterior teeth، يعني وين حيصير contact with the opposing tooth أحتاج إنه أمده 1 mm below it. ليش دا أحتاج إنه أسوي هذا التحضير وأمده على البكال surface؟ أحتاج لأنه بالposterior mandibular teeth functional cusp حتكون هي البكال surface، فلهذا يجب إنه أني أعطيها تحضير أكثر حتى توفر لي structural durability للrestoration، لأن منطقة الfunctional cusp تتعرض إلى stress أكثر. الفرق الثاني إنه كنا بالupper posterior teeth نمد ال two proximal groove نمدها بالocclusal offset، هنا ما حنحتاج الocclusal offset، اللي بدل الocclusal offset عندنا الoccluso buccal shoulder مثل ما تشوفوا بالصورة، اللي هو شنو هو هذا الشولدر finishing line أنا رسمته على الbuccal surface وحيعوض لي مكان الoffset. ولكن حيؤدي إنه هذا إنه يظهر معدن باللور posterior teeth أكيد أكثر showing of the metal will be more than for the maxillary posterior teeth. Now I will talk about the 340 crown for the maxillary anterior teeth, which is very used. The preparation will be first for the lingual surface, and the lingual reduction will be done similar to the other types of the crown. We prepare the cingulum area and then the lingual axial reduction. We should place a lingual incisal bevel using a diamond burr at 45 degrees to the path of insertion, and this termination should not be extended labially to prevent showing of the metal, as you see in the picture, the lingual incisal bevel. But for the lower anterior teeth, a reverse bevel is placed on the labial surface. This means that the metal will extend to cover the incisal edge in order to protect the area of unsupported enamel from fracture and to prevent the dislodgement of the crown in the lingual direction. After that, we do proximal detection, similar to full veneer crown. Besides, we need two proximal grooves should be placed at the junction between the labial and middle third of the proximal surface, and this proximal groove should be parallel to the incisal two-thirds of the labial surface, not parallel to the long x of the tooth, using a carbide fissure burr. And this is because we can place the longest groove in this direction for better retention and to avoid overcutting to the labial surface. If we do it parallel to the long X of the tooth, that may affect on aesthetic. After that, the medial and distal proximal groove should be connected together with a V-shaped groove, which is the incisal offset. And the advantage of the incisal offset will be to improve the strength of the casting at this area, beside reinforcement of the margin by connecting the two proximal grooves together. So, the main difference between anterior and posterior teeth preparation for 3/4 crown is that in the anterior teeth, the retentive groove should be parallel to the incisal two-thirds of the labial surface, while in the posterior teeth, the proximal groove should be parallel to the long X of the tooth to get the longest groove for better retention of the crown. I hope you understand the lecture and thank you for your attention.